All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is season 2 of Lucy's Paradise podcast. For season 2, it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to have in person interviews as well as online interviews. The first person right now for season 2 is Tyler O'Quinn. Tyler, if you could just let us know a little bit about you.
Well, thanks for having me, Lucy. Number one, congrats on season 2. I'm Tyler. I'm originally from Louisiana. I'm the first of 4 kids. Lucy and I used to work together there in Hawaii on Schofield for a few years, and I moved away for work, and then I'm currently living in Georgia also for work. I just graduated from college back in May of last year. Um, like staying informed. Great times. Lucy and we share a lot of views on everything. We've talked about just about everything under the sun. So I'm looking forward to have this conversation with you on your podcast for season 2, which coincidentally enough, if you put all my initials together, it spells the number 2. So what a way to kick it off for this season.
There we go. It was meant to be that you were on season 2.
Exactly.
So today it's going to be a little deep, and then in the next week I'm having my friend Alexis Monet on, and that one's going to be a little lighter. This one's going to be pretty controversial. So if you're not into any type of political stuff, you might want to skip this video. If you do want to hear what we got to say, then we appreciate you listening. The first thing I think that we should jump into is the immigration policy. I know a lot of people are, there's a good majority of people that are for it and people that are against it. So what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I'll preface my remarks for this episode saying, my view, everything I express are mine alone. They don't represent my current employer. But you're right. Immigration is a controversial topic. It's an emotionally charged one. As you know, my background is in criminal justice, and that's what I got my degree in this past May. And the issue really comes down to, on the one side, you have those proponents for the administration's immigration policies that were no secret by any stretch of the means. It's been known for months, if not years, that if the current administration was elected in this past November, which they were, this is what we would see happen. But Tom Homan, the border czar, has been explicitly clear about going after the more dangerous threats first. Whereas the naysayers are going to say, "Oh, this is going to separate families," but to quote Louisiana Senator John Kennedy, he would tell you to find someone who cares about this.
If you don't want your family to be separated, it's just
Right.
like, if there's violence in the home, if you don't want to be separated, don't break the law, right?
Right, exactly. That's the thing. And what I've told a few people when this topic comes up, it's like they broke the law. The law is the law, and if you don't like the law, there's a process and a mechanism in place under our constitutional system of government to fix and make changes to the law. And that's how it should be done. And the thing is, like as you said, families are separated every day. A parental figure in the house commits a crime, they're separated. If they have kids in the home, they're separated. If they go to jail, even if they're released on bail or no bail, whatever, it happens every day.
Right.
These migrants, when the minute these adults cross the border, or the parents back home in Colombia, Venezuela, wherever, and they're sending their kids with criminals, migrant smugglers and drug traffickers and everything else, they're making poor decisions that put these kids in jeopardy. Like, where's the same amount of energy and sympathy for the several 100,000 missing migrant children? Where's the sympathy for all the overdoses of fentanyl, which comes from China through Canada, through Mexico? So, like, where is the equal amount of sympathy? And it was funny. I had a conversation with somebody fairly recently trying to get me to say something that I disagreed with. Again, on the families being separated. It's like, well, if they're here illegally, they broke the law. ICE is going to go after the bad guys first, the more serious public threats first. Then, now, if they find some people who are not bad, they're just at the wrong place at the wrong time, they're going to take them too, because their job is to enforce the law, and that's what they've said they're going to do. And the president has given clear directives to that end.
Right. Yeah, so it basically, I was reading too that they've already detained like 5,000 people in San Diego and El Paso, Texas. So it's happening. You know, it's happening. What do you think about? Well, I think too. What people don't realize is that when you come to this country, to America, if you say that you're seeking asylum, you get to, I guess, bypass. I don't know exactly all the specific details on what you can bypass, but I guess it's like their way of being able to get in here
Yeah,
without
I mean,
having to
it's
go through the proper steps.
right. So yeah, there's certain, and I'll also say I'm no expert on immigration law. I mean, that's something I'm just not an expert on. I've never worked in that field, but um, undoubtedly there are reasonable and legitimate reasons for declaring asylum. There are. Um, and again, and if you make the right, if your situation fits the bill, then yes, there's certain processes that will let you seek asylum here in the United States. That, and those processes are there. That's fine. But the one area I draw the red line is economic hardship, because as you know, in on Oahu, there are homeless issues there. Same thing in our bigger cities like in Houston and other places. Like whenever they have big sporting events, like in the mainland, it's like public knowledge or alleged that they fly these migrants to Hawaii to clear them out of like areas in Houston, New Orleans, where they're hosting the Super Bowl, to clear
Right.
out so that the cities can host. So, uh, one argument is like, as part of this focus on America first with respect to immigration, like we have homelessness in our country. We have veterans who are struggling with addictions and financial hardship after leaving service. And and some of the proponents and I would even agree that we need to prioritize them first before we start helping others. It's not that we're uncharitable. America is one of the kindest, most generous and charitable countries around the world when it comes to aid, which that's another controversial topic in that of itself these days. But yeah, it's part, and we should help. Spirit, when it comes to prioritization of where we should help, it really comes down to Americans first, if you really think about it in a true objective way. And I'm not in any way saying that what these people are going through is bad. These illegal migrants are facing hardships. I sympathize with that. But as a nation, in order to be a nation at all, we have to be a nation of law. And our laws are written the way they are, going back 50 plus, 100 plus years. And that's how it is.
I think too, as a country, we have a reasonable expectation to focus on our citizens first. And me personally, I'm not against people coming here legally or people seeking asylum legitimately, things like that. But it is sad to see people, Americans, already struggling,
Oh,
you know,
yeah.
and then seeing our resources being used for people who aren't citizens. So
Oh yeah, and then you look at just highlighting, like, if you were to go on to X, formerly Twitter, and you look at the official Doge account, where they've been posting various updates on contracts being canceled, and you look at the recent news surrounding the U.S. Agency for International Development, which was founded by executive order by John F. Kennedy back in the 1960s. You're looking at what they're spending their money on, like 44 million on news subscriptions. Like, I'm sure you and I both know a news subscription to a big name news organization shouldn't cost $44 million. So there's a lot of real fiscal responsibility questions that lawmakers and even ordinary Americans are asking, like, why are we spending so much money in an agency? And Americans simply voted for this. And in another conversation I had, I've termed this organized chaos, with how we're unraveling all these things. But yeah, there needs to be responsibility. It's chaotic. There's going to be, and change is difficult. And a lot of people are having difficulty adapting to this new reality, because you compare the last time around with this administration as compared to today, it's almost like night and day of how fast things have been getting done within not even a month. of assuming office, which is
Right.
remarkable.
So my uncle, he grew up in a pretty well-off family in New York City. I think his dad owned like one of the biggest construction companies. He's not a fan of Trump. He just, grew up around a lot of those same people, and he fears that Trump is a dictator. What are your thoughts on that and those accusations?
Well, people seized on the joke, and it was not. If you look at the clip where former president, now current President Trump made it the joke that I'm going to be a dictator on day one just for a day. Like the political left, in my ever so humble
I didn't
opinion,
realize he
has
even made a joke about that. So he made a joke about
well,
that.
so he did. It was with Sean Hannity in a town hall, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong. Um, and just
Mm.
making a joke, a lighthearted joke, just like on day
Well,
one, I'm going to be a dictator.
I
And the
see.
political left, they have no sense of humor, and they can't seem to take a joke. People make comparisons to how who was it, Seth Meyers in 2011 at the White House Correspondents' Dinner, just roasting Trump to his face. When people say that was the moment President Trump decided he was going to run in a few years. Whether or not how true that is, I don't know. But the dictator comments, it's not accurate because the president was elected in 51 popular elections throughout the United States, which these elections determine how the electors in the Electoral College would vote in the following month of December of last year, which the votes were then read off, certified by Congress this past January 6th, and then was elected. 75 million Americans voted in the popular vote. The last time a Republican won both the Electoral College and the popular vote nationally was George W. Bush in 2004. So to say that he's a dictator is just mostly a political talking point of hyperbole that's just designed to gin up support, especially perhaps among low information voters who don't take the time to examine all aspects of politics or to really inform themselves of what's going on or throughout the world. So that it's just a hyperbole. It's not a real thing.
Yeah,
Because
I didn't realize
again,
it even generated from a joke. You know what I mean?
yeah,
I've
that,
just
that
been. To me, it felt like it was just randomly. I kept hearing it, and I was like, "Why do I keep hearing this?" You know.
mm-hmm.
So it's interesting, but
Oh
uh,
yeah, well, it's like the threats to democracy. Again, a lot of that stuff it's for the campaign. It's just to gin up support. It's to get people to vote, to polls. Like both sides do this. They find a phrase that they use, like the current phrase favored amongst the political left now is a shadow government with respect to the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, led by Elon Musk, which is an entity officially established within the executive office of the president. It used to be the U.S. Digital Service, which was established under the Obama administration. But since then, it was renamed the DOGE Service. There's also, if you read the executive order establishing it, it's a temporary organization with an expiration date of July 4th of next year for the 250th anniversary of the United States. So everything so far has been done in DOGE. Like there was talk, for example, of Elon Musk having an office in the West Wing of the White House, and President Trump's chief of staff said, "No, you're going to have an office across the street instead," because Elon, as smart as the guy is, and all the brilliant ideas he is, Trump has a really good chief of staff who was his campaign manager, who has done a phenomenal job, and she's part of the reason why he was ultimately successful in the election, of how things were going, along with a little help from his son Barron Trump on the podcasts, like going on Joe
yeah,
Rogan and stuff. So a lot of
yeah,
this
that
stuff
was
is.
interesting to see.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
He even went on that Aiden Ross kids podcast or whatever.
yeah. The
He's a Twitch
podcast he
streamer.
was. Yeah, he's done a number. I've seen throughout like the campaign. He had a number of podcasts. Like people came like the Logan Paul podcast came to Mar-a-Lago. He
Right.
went.
I forgot he did
There
that
was
one.
somebody who was a golfer. He went on a 18-hole round with somebody for golfing on one. I think it was at Bedminster, this course out there. So again, it's just showing like they've adapted. The political landscape has adapted because the legacy media of like ABC, CBS, NBC, they're dying. The new is where they're going to places like podcasts like this one and others that have a lot of following where people are getting not only just talking about what's new, it's also the news.
Right.
So it's the dynamics are certainly changing, but again, the whole dictator stuff, hyperbole. It's not serious because the threats to democracy stuff, like you didn't really hear all of that after November 5th.
Right. Right. So let's change gears a little bit. I want to read off a little bit about this. January 20th, President Trump signs an executive order recognizing only two sexes, male and female, and directing federal agencies to cease promotion of the concept of gender transition. The order, which Trump signed from the Oval Office as part of a broader campaign, promised to rid the nation of what he has called transgender insanity and reverse diversity and inclusion initiatives instituted by the Biden administration. What are your thoughts on this executive order? I know we kind of touched on this a little bit.
Yeah, so again, this is another one of those things the Trump Vance campaign had said that they were going to do if elected, and this is just another one of that. And it's also, in my ever so humble opinion, just a recognition that science is still a thing. Like you had, like with COVID, people saying, trust the science with respect to the vaccines, and then you then all of a sudden see, well, then how can there be like 47, 69, 21 genders? Like how does that make sense if there's only two genders of dogs? Then how can there be more genders of humans? And it's really the concept of gender identity is really a sociological concept rather than founded in actual biological science.
Right.
These orders that the president signed, along with the one yesterday about women's sports,
Yes.
are basically rooted in common sense. There's always been male and female. The Bible in the book of Genesis clearly expresses that God
Right.
created
We're
man.
gonna get into the women's sports thing,
Oh yeah,
but
we will.
so you
But
agree there's two sexes basically.
yeah, two biological sexes, which I think is like me being like a millennial slash very early Gen Zer, being born in '97. It's like that's how we were raised, and like the concept of transgender and all this other stuff is fairly new, and it's really an academic concept. It's not based on anything, because even if you go through these procedures with hormone replacement therapy, your neuromusculoskeletal build is essentially the same. It doesn't matter. And I think part of it also was this idea where you look at where people who are struggling in the male category, they decide I want to do this, and all of a sudden they're breaking records. And again, I know that's going into the sports realm, but I think it's like,
Right.
but gender dysphoria, I think, is a real medical condition mentally. Um, but I think the way it's been attacked, as far as how to treat and diagnose it and so on, hasn't been the correct way. Now, I'm again no
Right. Right.
expert on any stretch of the means, but um, it's one of those. It's like make this make sense, like how, but but yeah,
Yeah.
it's
I
one
mean,
that is
I'm gonna be honest. I mean, I knew of one transgender person that was very believable to me in terms of how they felt about themselves. This is like one person back when I was in high school. And in recent times, I've just felt like it kind of has been like a trend. I don't want to say that in a negative way, but that's how
yeah,
it's been perceived from, I mean,
that's
I remember, all of a sudden just everybody wanted to like chop their boobs off. I didn't understand.
yeah,
So I don't know.
there is no applying reason to irrational minds. I mean, that it's this, there is no way to really explain it. Yes, it's for some people it's a trend. Other people, it's how they genuinely feel, and they're honest, and they're and everything is in place. There's nothing going. There's no cogs missing out of the clock. It's that's how they feel, and by undergoing that process, it actually helps them out. Which, again, it's not for everybody, but like with anything, with some trends, people take it too far. Like, when it comes to certain other piercings and stuff like that, people take it way too far, and other people think that's awesome the way they do it. So,
So,
uh,
in terms of the transgender being able to transition while in the military, what are your thoughts on that?
well, it impacts readiness, especially for like ground. If you're going to be in ground combat, like in the Army or the Marines, the the issue is if you start the transition, it's about a year-long to 2-year-long process, and then you're taking medication for the rest of your life. To throw a hypothetical out there, if we were to go to war in somewhere, it could be Europe, could be in Asia, one person out of a squad, which is about 12 people, one person out of a tank crew in an Abrams tank or a Bradley fighting vehicle, etc., can make a huge difference.
Right.
And these procedures are not cheap by any stretch of the imagination. And the administration recently announced that they were going to stop funding those surgeries and
Mm.
procedures because they've determined that they are not conducive to maintaining readiness and to maintaining lethality. And there's a court challenge about that. Um, but um, from a pure financial perspective, it does not help the Department of Defense maintain its mission to go out, fight, and win our nation's wars when called upon, or to assist America and our friends and allies abroad if called upon, or here at home in responding to disasters like in North Carolina, for example.
So when people say, and I don't think this way. This is just what I've read. People will say, well, if you sign up to go fight our wars, we should let you have whatever surgeries you want. Now, as far as I am aware, that you actually do get one cosmetic surgery covered
Oh,
under the
yeah.
military already.
Yeah.
So I guess because of how extensive a transgender surgery would be, I guess that doesn't necessarily cover that. I'm not sure, but
Well, I
it
mean,
sounds
and
like it's not enough.
I'm not too familiar with all the
The
policies and
specific,
procedures governing the cosmetic surgery, but yeah, that's fairly understood to get a cosmetic surgery, or even like if you needed like you've had like something you could have gotten, it was like optional surgery, like for your eyesight, like LASIK surgery, which people get all the time in the military, so they stop
right?
wearing glasses, and all that. Like that's fairly routine. Then that's not a problem, and stuff like that especially helps with maintaining readiness and lethality because that's less eyeglass prescriptions that have to be dealt with, and that helps somebody
Right.
see, especially if they're going to be in close combat. So these cosmetic surgeries can have potential in helping readiness. But again, but especially with surgeries that are costly, with again a life, like you're going to be on pills the rest of your life. I think from a numbers perspective, it's not really worth the investment. I mean, that's how I approach the issue, especially is from a numbers
Right.
perspective. That's fine. If someone on the private sector wants to do that, like knock yourself out. I don't want to pay for it.
What about the argument that it's such a low percentage? Like, why not? Do you think that'll inspire people that maybe can't afford to get transgender surgery to like join the military
Well,
just to get that benefit?
I mean, again, I think when it comes to our nation's defense, which again, that's what the Department of Defense is. It is designed to defend our nation. Every dollar needs to be spent wisely. It needs to be spent towards its mission and taking care of people. And I can think of of several places where that money that you would used to be going towards these surgeries would actually be better spent towards quality of life concerns, especially in high cost of living areas like Hawaii, um, and towards like barracks in terms of all sorts of stuff. There's places,
Right.
so the money would not be wasted per chance because it would be going towards other things that are needed. In fact, in my opinion, to help recruit soldiers, and again, you mentioned it. Yes, it's a small percentage, but as you know, when it comes to budgeting, every single dollar, every single cent counts. So, and I think, especially considering how expensive these surgeries are, especially if somehow more people who wanted to get these surgeries were to join, and the department didn't change policy, it would have potentially cost taxpayers. And to kind of give another example in terms of where they had to make changes on another program, it's the tuition assistance. In the Army, before, you had up to $4,000 a year towards college. Very effective program. I might have taken advantage of that at one point. But then the Army said, well, we're going to cap it at an X amount. I don't remember what it is right off the top of my head, because of how successful the program was, and it was becoming fiscally unsustainable.
Unrealistic, right.
It was becoming unrealistic. So the Army had to make changes. So again, this is just one of those things purely from
and
a
that's
fiscal.
really important, because that can be a driving force to enhance your career, prepare you for civilian life, whatever else.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also other benefits. Like, I enlisted out of Texas. So in Texas, you have what's called the Hazelwood Act. It's Texas's own version of like the post 9/11 GI Bill, where you can go to public school in the state of Texas and get your education. So those are benefits, and there are other opportunities for education in the Army. Still, it's just they had to make some changes in order to serve the whole force and be fiscally responsible.
Right. So with that, I think we can assume what your thoughts are with transgender males in women's sports, but do you want to kind of touch on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a safety thing first and foremost, and then again, you have people who we cannot rationalize what they're thinking. And call me old school, but boys do not belong in girls' rooms, and girls do not belong in boys' rooms. It goes both ways, and especially someone who's been in the criminal justice realm. That is a can of worms best left closed, and then sealed, buried, never to be opened again. And that's really what it is, and that's why a lot of people, because people feel uncomfortable. It's like personal dignity, it's privacy, it's simple self-respect. Whereas other people have, it can be assumed quite reasonably, where people want to be able to do that, and that's why they want to be transgender, so they can do all stuff. I'm making guesses and assumptions here. I'm not 100% sure, and I'm not saying that's the case, but it's a safety thing. And it's like, especially having someone you are uncomfortable changing with in a locker room, like, that's not going to help the team win. If that's going to be a problem. And we've seen instances like in volleyball, this past volleyball season, about that, with schools like forfeiting matches because, like I said earlier, the neuromusculoskeletal build of males in particular has not changed. They're still stronger, where they can lift more weight than females. Now, I will also say at the same time, there are some females out there who could kick my own rear end around easily. And I'm not, and that's just how it is, because they've done the training and they're built like that.
But in more instances than not, a male is going to be in some, faster, at least stronger, if not faster,
stronger, and able to and be able to engage a lot longer in any activity. So it's a safety thing, really, at the end of the day, and that's where a lot of people are coming from. It's not that they're so quote unquote transphobic. It's safety and dignity. So the president's executive
fairness
order,
too, maybe.
Fairness too, because again, you look at the swimmer Leah Thomas, male, was not doing very well in men's swimming, which we all know it comes down to like tenths and hundredths of a second in the pool, whereas transitions starts breaking records. And it's not just swimming; it's in other sports too, like powerlifting. I think that was a topic.
I don't know if I would feel like as accomplished, I would just feel like I'm cheating.
Yeah, it's kind of ironic. It's like the political left was all about women's rights and everything years ago, like the suffrage movement back in the 1920s.
Right, and this is kind of challenging that, actually.
Yeah, it is. It's again, it's
like
one of those
a weird roundabout way, right?
Yeah, it's coming full circle, where some of the crazy academic theorems are just coming out against reality, and that's where I think a lot of people voted the way they did in this past election was it was
Mm.
coming back to sanity with respect to a lot of the stuff. That's why they made the choices that they made. So again, like you and there was controversy in the Olympics. I mean, from the opening ceremony throughout some of the boxing matches.
Right.
And considering the U.S. is set to host the 2026
Hmm.
or no, the 2028 Olympics in L.A., this matters immensely for just simple fairness across all sports.
I don't know how they're
Um,
gonna do that in LA. You know that they're gonna shoo all the homeless away.
yeah, I wonder where.
Um, so Theo Vaughn had the idea. I watched one of his podcasts, and he was like, "What about them having their own category? Does that maybe make a better solution?"
Um, that's entirely possible, but then again, like you said earlier, with like a number of people were wanting to join the military, get the surgeries, it's such a small number. I don't even know if it's worth even the money to do that.
Right.
Um, but again, when it comes to the transgender issue, it's for me, it's purely the dollars, the fiscal element of it, and then it's just safety and fairness. Because no one should feel uncomfortable in the locker room. And then no one should be significantly subject to injury. Like I've seen supposedly like there was a
Right.
volleyball player out there that could hit 80-mile-an-hour spikes with the ball, and we know in baseball you can easily top triple
Dang.
digits a couple times. And think of that, having a ball coming at 80
Wow.
plus miles an hour at your face,
That's
potentially.
that's
Like
wild.
it's again, it's safety. Again, it's difference in strength and build.
Right. Right.
Um, so that's where a lot of that concern is, and it's not unfounded. It's pretty legitimate, in my opinion.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, I appreciate your thoughts on those topics. I have one more kind of controversial topic, and then I have a few just fun questions for you that,
Hmm.
yeah, are a little more lighthearted to be able to finish off the podcast. But um, this past, what was it? This past week, they had the Grammys, right? The Grammys
Right.
award show, and Beyonce won. She won a Grammy for Best Country Album. Now, I did more research. I didn't realize this would have been her she in total has been nominated for 99 Grammys categories at some point in her career. What do you think about her winning for country album though?
For some
'Cause
reason,
you're a country lover, right? Country
I mean,
music.
yeah, casually like George Strait and some of the more classic stuff. Well, one, I'm not necessarily the biggest follower of the Grammys. I mean, there's nothing usually for me there. But of course, kudos to all the artists who won a Grammy or two or three that night. Um, but yeah, I mean, her take, I think, like this ain't Texas, was certainly an interesting take. Not necessarily something I would listen to myself, but
It's almost like anti-country, no?
it's kind of like with Billy Ray Cyrus and Lil Nas X coming out
Oh,
with that. I mean, it's people's definitions of country music or this, that, the other, very differently. Like if you like good music to me is like actually
timeless.
well, not this classical like soundtracks of like John Williams, Michael Giacchino, Hans Zimmer, and then one of my more recent songs I've come to like is actually Training Season by Dua Lipa, if I got her name correctly, hopefully,
Ooh,
but and
Dua Lipa.
specifically the recording they did at the Royal Albert Hall in London, the live version, which
Okay,
is
you'll have to
with
send
a
that to
full
me.
philharmonic orchestra. It's
Oh
actually on
wow.
Apple Music right now. It's really good, and I was seeing some reels on it on Instagram, and like someone was like, "This is their gym anthem," or something like that. They're playing like they're doing like lateral presses and everything, and and this is what is blasting in their AirPods or whatever, and it's like, yeah, I can see that. It's a
Yeah,
really
yeah.
good song, and to me,
Awesome.
if you're for music, that is music right there. Classical orchestral music His passion, his music. There's a lot. There's no vulgarities. There's no nothing. Because when you start throwing in vulgarities and derogatory terms, I call it garbage. It's not music at all. It's just straight garbage.
Yeah, I think you just got to be careful what you're surrounding yourself with, and I think that includes what you're listening to.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
100%.
and so I try to listen to more positive stuff now. I mean, most of the time it's like Hawaiian music because it's just so
Oh yeah,
fun and
Hawaiian music is
lighthearted. You know,
positive as hell with the aloha spirit and
yeah, it
everything.
makes you feel good. You know.
Exactly.
But all
So
right, I got some fun questions for you. I didn't even know that she made a country album. Like I didn't even realize like any of her stuff was considered country or whatever.
yeah.
So that was news to me. But okay, you have options here. If you were given a chance to explore space or the ocean, which one would you choose?
Mm. Well, I do not like the water with respect to my current employment, so space would be the option. I'd rather go to space than go underwater.
Okay.
Although I don't mind swimming in a pool every once in a while.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, a space. I think I'm more ocean than space. Space is a little too scary. It's a little too uncharted territory.
Yeah.
I don't like the not being able to breathe thing. But I guess you kind
Yeah,
of have that in the
that's
ocean
valid.
too.
That's valid.
Okay. What would the title of your autobiography be if it had to make people laugh?
The Gospel of Tyler Isms. Because and the reason I say that is
Ooh, I like that.
with my roommates when we discuss topics of great philosophical interest, I will talk like practicalities is one of those, like or like other stuff. There's things I've said that my roommates can now almost quote me verbatim what I'm going to say when it comes to certain topics.
Oh,
It's like
I like that.
yeah, so literally just be able to open up, it's like chapter and verse what I'm going to say when it comes to certain topics. So yeah, that'd be it. The Gospel of Taylorisms or something like that.
Okay, I like that. I like that. Okay, so if you could witness any historical event, which one would it be?
Well, being a admirer of history, I would definitely want to see the signing of the Declaration of Independence because that
That's a good one.
was the turning point in world history. I would argue, which was the creation of the United States. And the reason I say this philosophically, I credit the Brits for unwittingly creating the world's greatest superpower ever through taxing tea and other things and all that.
Yeah,
Um, because because America's in a interesting way, in a British creation, because we created the biggest superpower, the span that has whose influence rivals that of the British Empire at its peak under Queen Victoria. And America with World War II would not only would go on to actually replace the British as the leading standard for freedom, justice, and democracy around the world. So that would be something I'd want to see as a specific event. There's others, but that one I think would be the ultimate one.
that's your top one. I
Yeah,
think I'd want to like hear Martin Luther King like speak at an event. I think
like his speech on the National Mall at the Lincoln Memorial.
yeah, like I think that would be cool to like
Oh yeah.
be in the crowd, like hearing those words for the first time or whatever. I think it's
Mm-hmm.
just it would be neat.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Like that. That would be like another one to go see. See him at the Lincoln Memorial, talking about it, like with his "I'd Have a Dream" speech, one of the most iconic speeches in American history, particularly with civil rights.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any fun questions for me before we end?
I mean, I think all the fun questions I already know the answers to. So, and I think your
Okay.
other episodes have probably covered that. But no, not
Any
really. I mean,
any other advice or thoughts you want to put out?
well,
to the
keeping with
world.
keeping with the theme of politics for this episode, what I would say to anyone out there watching, like, don't buy into all the hype
The
that
propaganda.
the propaganda, and then to some people that the term propaganda or even misinformation is subjective. The best way to be able to navigate all this is to be informed, to take a step back and to approach it in an objective, analytical way to solve a problem. And that's how I approach it. Like, once you take the emotional element out of these issues, but especially politics, and you are able to digest what they are, and you actually take the time to, as boring as it is, read the law and understand some of the stuff, you'll find it's actually very interesting, and you'll
Mm,
realize what's going on. So, and I think that's what a lot of people, because, like, for example, with the U.S. aid debacle going on right now,
right.
it's people are realizing that the change has come, and they're not liking the change. But everything will be fine in the end. The world is not on fire. There's no threats or anything like that out there, to at least America. But by taking the time to educate yourselves, by reading not just from your normal run of the mill places, and willing to at least hear the other side and have the conversations instead of trying to entrap one side or the other with gotcha questions, that will help shape things going forward. And but yeah, other than that, just being positive and going about your daily lives. I mean, like a lot of these issues that people can talk about with transgenderism, whatever, it's like it doesn't affect me. It's not my problem. And I have the belief that if it's not my problem, I don't worry about it until it becomes my problem, at which point I'm going to try to not make it my problem anymore. And I've usually told people if that happens, you're probably not going to like what I end up doing, because
Right.
especially with topics I have no interest in being anywhere near, because it's just not something I need to be a part of. So,
Right.
and then the other thing is you cannot apply rational thought to irrational minds. It's the same. It's
I
true in,
like that. I like that quote. I
yeah,
really like that quote.
yeah. It's something I've learned in criminal justice, because with criminals, they commit crime just because they can.
Yeah.
That's it. They can, and they decided that I'm going to do it. It's as simple as that. And there's no why. There's no philosophical reason, because of Article 1, Section 5. It says this. It's literally, um, they can do it.
Yeah.
It does not make any sense. And
Well,
sometimes, like,
some
if you
people
look,
are adrenaline junkies.
oh yeah, that too. Like,
It's an addiction.
mm-hmm. Oh yeah,
Could be some people.
yeah. The motivation of some people for what they do is of multifaceted reasons that they are easily explained, reasons that are a little more difficult, and reasons that can't be explained at all.
Yeah.
And that's not just with criminals; it's in politics, it's in things. It could be anywhere. And pick the industry. There are things that make sense and don't make sense. And as you and I both know, there are things that we had to do while we worked together as coworkers for a few years that we're sitting here wondering, why do we have to do this? It makes no
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
So, um, but yeah, this is so. And then I'll close on my end by saying thanks for having me on. Um, and I'm sure we're gonna probably do this again sometime down the line.
Yeah.
These
Definitely.
topics, they're important, they're controversial. But and I would also say, having these conversations about the difficult topics matters, because at some point you're going to have them, and it's sometimes better to solve problems like these sooner as opposed to later. Um,
It's a good point.
because it makes life for everyone better. And then, and as you and I know, there's other topics I feel very strongly on, relating to where, um, with military and quality of life and stuff like that. Like, as you know, like Red Hill, like that
I'd
was a
love to have you and somebody else on and like mediate like a debate. That could be fun. I just thought of that.
yeah. I mean,
Like
that would
someone
certainly be interesting,
that would be
for sure.
really interesting.
Yeah, it would. But
Very
yeah,
friendly, obviously.
oh yeah, very
Very
friendly. We
friendly
agreed to.
debate. Give you like a minute to respond. Like I could
Mhm.
structure it in a way, but
Oh yeah,
yeah,
I mean, that would be awesome. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, and it's always important to be able to have these conversations,
Definitely.
But yeah, I mean, this is great. This is my first podcast ever to be on, so thanks for having me.
Yay. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thanks to everybody for watching Lucy's Paradise podcast. I've gained about 100 followers since my last video, so I'm super appreciative of that. And like I said, this season will be slightly different, but there will be in-person podcasts coming up. I have a lot of really cool guests. So thanks again, Tyler, for coming on. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Lucy. Thanks for being a great friend.